Welcome to Better Business Podcast. My name is Cliff. This is my wife.
I'm Sydney. It feels weird saying that.
It's always weird using our names.
It is.
We don't use them when we talk to each other. We have our is it pet names?
I don't know. It's just babe.
Let's just babe to each other. So, anyways, I have a name. I use it every now and then for letting real life people know what I'm called. We are here to discuss business and kind of how we've done it through our experiences, what we've seen education wise, what we've gotten, and let people know how they can kind of start a business, work with business, and better themselves so that their business is more, what am I looking for here? More,
I don't know what you're looking for.
all right, better, that word.
Yeah.
So we recently talked about partnerships, and then we thought the next one would be great talking about communication amongst partnerships. And we have like kind of how you develop into a more of a successful working partnership, I would say. And that greatly relies on communication.
hmm
And so
Pretty
with the
much
partnership,
everything in business relies on
I think just
communication.
as humans in general, I think communication is probably never taught as well as it should be.
Well, it's hard to be taught. I think it's more creating an action plan for it
Mhm.
because it's hard, especially when you're focused on something for whatever project you're doing. Your communication may not be the best, or one person has a thought on how it should be done, and another person has a thought how it should be done. And unfortunately, it's not talked about a lot. Like, oh, well, I'm thinking about this, or I'm thinking about this.
Mhm.
It's the person just does the action and then they forget to relay it to the other person or within the whole scheme of the business, especially if you have employees. Sometimes it's not well communicated on what's going on or what their job task is supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's huge. And like that happens with partnerships all the time. And I think that's something that happened with us a lot until mostly this year. I think we've kind of got it going a little bit better than ever.
I think we still have a lot of development, so to say, on
Mhm.
it. But we're since we have what is it now, 3 years of experience,
Yes.
so we now know compared to when we first started versus when we set like the first year,
Mhm.
it was not good.
No.
The second year got a little better, and then as it got more like we added years, we started understanding like, okay, well, this is my thought process. And then I think we talked about it in another podcast where we have different hats we put on.
Yes.
Um, because that's the form of communication. Like, I'm not going to communicate to you like a business person when we're not doing business, quote unquote.
Yeah, definitely. Like when we're having personal discussions outside of business, it is you gotta take off the business partner hat, put the wife or husband hat on,
hmm
and change your style of communication.
hmm
And I think it's big because it is hard in business to switch back and forth, and it really was in the beginning for us too.
Yeah.
It's because there is such a difference of, not just goals, but how you communicate and what you're communicating for, and what you're working towards there.
hmm
So you have to learn how those different types of communication and how to like both receive it and kind of speak it.
Yeah.
So
And like you were saying, we set goals. We ended up having similar goals, which helped us in the long scheme of things for communication because we know our end goal.
mhm,
First, you like if we didn't communicate our goals, you could have one goal on the left field and I could have one goal on the right field. And how do we come together on them when we don't communicate?
mhm. When you're supposed to go to the middle, but you have no idea what the middle is
Yeah.
because you don't talk about that, and you've got to come up with those goals. which leads us back to episode 1, which is you develop a why first.
Yeah.
And then when you develop that and you talk to it, especially with your partner or significant other, however you're setting up the business, you have to have that why.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to bring your why into it to develop a goal.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to communicate that goal and make sure both people are on track. Like if we had a partner who, we're gonna make balloons, but they want to make uh DVDs.
Okay.
They want to develop DVDs. They like that industry and they know it. They want to partner with us because we're good at business, but we want to make balloons. Like and we don't know that when we sign up and start the business. I mean, that's hard to just kind of pivot towards because they're completely separate products.
Yes.
But so you have to be able to develop that communication with like a partner before you start too.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go in knowing what the end goal is.
Yeah.
Kind of like start from
the
back and kind of work your way how it's going to work.
Yeah, and maybe that's another episode we should do is kind of creating a business plan for your long-term scheme of things and then work backwards from it. But that'll be a different one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But back to communication, it's the root of all things almost. It's just I don't even know where to go from it because it's just it has to happen.
I mean, nothing will get done if nobody makes a decision and does something.
Yeah.
And even actions are a form of communication.
Yes.
And so like stuff has to get done. So you have to do it, but you have to also, I mean, if you're going to do it effectively, you have to have a plan. And that plan requires the communication. If you're in a business by yourself, you really only need to communicate with the mirror.
Yeah.
Now we're in business together and we're married. So like everything we do, we need to talk about.
Yes.
And so we need to have, each of our businesses needs to have a goal and we need to talk about what that goal is and strive for it. And it also has to reflect our why. And then we have to take off the business hats, and as husbands, as spouses, we have to talk about that, but we have to talk about it.
Here, fun question.
Oh yeah.
So say we weren't together and one of us started a business and then we started dating and wanting to come together. How would we start talking about business and relationship at the same time? Like how would we
I think
mix those?
That's a great question. I mean, you're progressing through your relationship and you're gonna be figuring out if you're gonna be with this person or not, and they're gonna be asking you business questions. And in the beginning, you just tell them what you do, kind of how it works. You maybe your own why, and then as you go on, I would say like you just communicate like, if we keep doing this, how is this gonna work together? Because this is what I want to do, and like we were talking about, my goal is in left field. Here's where I want to do, and this is what I want. And if you're going to be a part of me, like you got to be on the same field. How are we going to take your right field and my left field, meet in the middle?
Okay.
So I think that comes like, as time goes on, that's not like a first date question, without showing all your red flags to somebody. So like, I'm sure some most business people probably would appreciate it if they're dating, because then they'd be like, yes, like in business, quick to the point, things get done. I like it. But I think most normal people don't like the whole red flag, everything all at once type of thing. So I think it just comes down to what we are talking about, is communication. And it is like you were saying, it's always evolving. We always need to work on it because we're not great, but we're better.
Yeah.
And just telling this person, here's my business, here's where I want to see it go. And maybe it is something where it's like, in 3 years, I want to sell it.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I have to work hard for 3 years because then I could sell it for a few million and maybe then I can have an easier life after that. So like while we're dating, it's going to be hard because I'll have like times where I have to leave or answer calls or stuff like that. And I think just setting that expectation of somebody is going to be very helpful in making that relationship last and work.
Yeah, it's a good point.
I think that's a great question because it's not just dating. It's also like if you we have a friend who wants to start a business
Mhm.
or has a business and we want to like join up, like something's going on, they want to partner, give out some of their equity, something like that. That's, I mean, a great situation. That's also like not a situation, but that's kind of the same scenario in a way. You have to talk about it, what they want, what we want, how do we make it happen for both parties to want to do this and benefit from it.
Yeah. I'm kind of running out of ideas. This sounds bad.
No, I think it's just letting people know that communicate, like how communication is important, like because you need to speak your goals, but also like, as time goes on, you need it's the business itself is going to be evolving and you're going to be evolving. Maybe, goals change or you have a different idea and you want to try it. Like
Mhm.
we did with Benner's Stride. I mean, we had an idea and eventually we were like, what if we add this and this happens? We had to talk through that, how that's going to work, how this is going to go, what our goal is for that if we did it that way. And then we started implementing it and then we still have to talk about it.
Yeah.
We have to sit down. And I think that's kind of the next step is like, when you're in business with other people, the amount of communication you have or how often, what you need to talk about. And I think that just comes down to what is your expectation of this? What do you expect from me? Or what would make you feel better about this
Yeah.
that
And
we could plan and get through and kind of do together?
I know for both of us, lately, sitting down once a week, writing out a to-do list for the whole week, then we know what our tasks are. So we communicate about it once
Mhm.
because we know obviously we work 9 to 5 jobs too. So our business is not everything right now.
Yeah.
So we have to sit down, plan it, and then during the week while we're working our 9 to 5, we have to focus on that.
Mhm.
And when we get home, we don't like, especially for me, I don't have the mental capacity to sit there and think, okay, I need to do this, this, and this. Because at work, I was like, okay, I had to do this, this, and this.
Mhm.
So when I come home, all I want to do is look at the list. I don't want to think about things. And I communicate that like that one day for the whole week
Mhm.
because I just want to be a robot the
Yeah.
rest of the time. Now, I'm sure that would be different if I could be, more focused on the business. But as of right now, I need to juggle everything.
Mhm.
And that is the best way is for me with a partner is by writing a list down, communicating it once, and then the rest of the week I can be a robot until that list comes back up.
Yeah, I mean, that's expectations. You know that during the week that you're going to be tired, that you don't want to think about what needs to be done, you just want to do what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that on the weekends, you're mentally there.
Mm-hmm.
So we developed this that every week we come up with this list. And, if something comes up, we will address it, obviously. But if, a week's pretty quiet, we're taking out these tasks.
Mm-hmm.
No questions, just gonna do them. We don't have to hurry it. We don't have to sit there and think about it. Take an extra half hour a day and do it. We just do it.
Yeah.
And that expectation has helped us, or like that communication that is what works for us,
Mm-hmm.
what we need to do, and that allows us to talk and to think about the week. We go through the scheduling. We go through the priority list we have. Those are the other things I talked about. That business doing in business helps you get ahead. So we're doing those things and they do help us because eat and then you look at the list and you're like, I'm gonna get this one done, and you go do it, it's done.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can move on to the next one and you just start crossing out things.
Yeah.
So it's there. We thoroughly thought about it when we could,
Mm-hmm.
and now we implement that thought into
Yes.
action.
Yes.
So I mean that's amazing. That was an amazing way to bring that up and show that communication is important because now we don't waste that time.
Mm-hmm.
We have all that time back, especially because most people who probably would listen to this podcast or watch it, they're gonna be start working in the 9 to 5. They're gonna be working their 8-hour shift day and then trying to do this on top of it, like we are.
Yeah.
And you get bogged down mentally, or You get asked to
You
stay
get
longer.
burnt
You
out.
get burned, you know. So you having this prepared for you helps you so much because you know the priority list, and you can even put a little star next to it. This week, the starred
This
items
has to get done.
first.
Yeah.
So you do those first. So it's part of a task list.
Yeah. I lately for me, this is kind of going more onto the topic of lists instead of communication, but I still have to communicate to you. I put the days on, okay, this has to be accomplished this day. Now, does it happen? No. I just, okay, well, it'll have to be pushed off to this day. But if there is a strict deadline, it has to be done that day. And I just write deadline at the end. So then I know it has to be done that day.
Yeah. And that's part of like organizing and keeping your priority list and your schedule together.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just a great example of how everything we're talking about just ties into business. You have to always be thinking of it and always doing it. It's not just one item of business you can handle or you
Yeah.
have to do. It's all intertwined.
Yeah. And it's in another way, multitasking. It's essentially intertwined multitasking.
Yeah.
They just have to go together.
You have to schedule and prioritize at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And communicate it if you have a partner within it.
I mean, if you were by yourself doing those items, what would you do?
I would probably still write it down and I'd still give myself deadlines, but I wouldn't have to communicate it to another person. I'd just be communicating it to myself. So then I feel like I'm keeping myself accountable rather than where I guess partnerships, we keep each other accountable. But for myself, that would be my accountability is that to do checklists, but I'd communicate that to myself, just word vomit everything and then bring it back in.
And I think with a partner, you do have that other perspective that can come in and help you, but it does take more time.
It does.
Because you have to talk to them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, instead of doing one person's job, you have two people doing one person's job.
Exactly.
That's where communicating, and that's where it becomes a little bit worth that time to take the task, write down the task list together and go through it and make sure both people are on the same page or multiple people are on the same page. So I think that's great. And I think, another person to communicate with is not just like if you're a partner, but if you were by yourself. You brought up a great point, accountability partner. It doesn't have to be anybody in your organization, but it could be, we do meetings with like real estate folks and we have other business friends we talk to and we kind of talk about what we do, and it kind of does help us keep accountable because it also is like, oh, did you do this that you talked about last time? And it's like, yeah, I got that done and here's this, or no, no, I decided not to, here's why. Like you kind of have somebody who's in a way pressuring you, but also like encouraging you at the same time, which is very nice and helpful. And I think if somebody is in business by themselves, doesn't have a partner or significant other that will be part of the business and they want to include in it, I think that is important. And I know that's kind of what we hope to do as business coaches is we want to be that accountability partner for people who don't have one. And we have experience. We also want to be like, well, did you think of this too? And then have you thought about doing this? And they're like, oh, that's okay. I never thought of that. That you're bringing in that other mind who can help you push along. And I think to the people who are trying to do business by themselves, I think that's important and kind of why we are here as business coaches is we just want to make sure people know that they're not alone, and like we would love to help them as accountability partners and help them with their business.
And that's exactly why with the restructure for Banner Stride, because it was originally just me and focusing on equine because that's my specialty, and realized, it's a saturated market. Why don't I bring you in so then we can have a bigger range for business? Because you see business coaches, but it's one coach. And it just like, it's a good idea, but I like the idea, why don't I bring in another person? So there's two coaches to help that one business to bounce ideas off of everybody rather than, one person for one business. Now, don't get me wrong, that's effective.
Mhm.
But it just made more sense for me as a business owner to have like two people as coaches to bounce ideas. I don't know.
I think that it isn't like you want to provide value to people,
Yes.
and we want to help people. We both had that before we even started this business.
Hmm.
And so when you were, going through it and you had to, we communicated what you were thinking about your business
Yeah.
and what was going on. You found out it's saturated. You found out that the market just wasn't there
Yeah.
for what you were looking for, and you weren't able to help people the way you wanted to.
Yes.
And we brought up, I can do bookkeeping. I got a new job, so I could do bookkeeping outside of it.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, we can do bookkeeping now. Like you can talk to them about scheduling and all these things. Like we're talking about pretty much is like the things you were talking about and going through with people. And then I can help with the financial part of it. So like rather than you having to focus on that learning, you can be even better at what you'd know. And then I can bring in the financial side of it and explain to them the bookkeeping. And then they have a coach and a bookkeeper who are both like helping them push along, and they don't have to
Hmm.
worry about like, oh, do I need to file this thing, or do I need to like sign up for this, or how do I,
Hmm.
how does my books look? Where am I spending my money? They can have that together, and we communicate that to them,
Hmm.
and then they can do whatever they got to do with their business. But that was what we had to go through, and we had to talk about that together.
Yeah.
And then that's when we started developing lanes, and I think that's important to talk about as well.
Yeah. Yeah. But going back or before we go down that,
Yes.
um, I noticed that for at one point I wanted to make a course.
Hmm.
But then thinking about it, I personally bought a course, but I didn't get that connection. I didn't get that communication that I needed for my business.
Hmm.
That a course, like the course provided valuable information,
Yeah.
but it didn't give that one-on-one connection. And they did offer like a group um conversation, like we'd all get on, and but there would be 500 people in this one conversation.
It's like going to school and sitting in a lecture hall.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Valuable information, but it's not targeted just for you.
Yeah.
Where I feel a communication, so like if we get on a Zoom meeting or just conversation on the phone,
Yeah.
it's going to be more personal because, okay, I know about this person, what their business is, what their goals are, what their questions are,
Yeah.
rather than here's my course.
Some people benefit from that course, and that's perfectly fine. But I
Oh,
do
yeah.
think that you and I talked about that, and it is like, as a hobby, this is like a passion of ours is doing things like this. We love talking business.
Mhm.
And so we're like, well, why would we want to just kind of implement it into a course and give away, or not give away, but like
Not have that
not
personal connection.
not do the thing we want love the most. Like we would be not outsourcing, but like just taking away the part of the business, the whole part of it that we want to do and we're really good at, and that's the fun part for us.
Yeah.
Just because it could bring in money, but it could help multiple people. But at the same time, like that personal level like we have a client who we're helping, and it's like you said, we get on a call with them. They have this question, they have this going on. We know the entire thing that's going on with them.
Yeah.
And every time we get off the call, we end with, what else can we do to help you? And they're like, I think almost every call, they're like, this conversation helped me. Like it's so much better just to talk through and know, like have an idea and hear what you
Mhm.
have to say. And like these suggestions are just amazing. Like I feel better doing this. That's the
Yeah.
whole point of what we're trying to do.
Yeah. And then when we get on a call with someone else, we know that theirs is completely different.
Yeah.
So we kind of do the same process, but we focus on that individual rather than, as a course, it'd be focusing on a bunch of individuals all at once rather than that personal connection to have that communication between that one person.
Yeah. We have to be answering generic questions all the time. that'd be the only way we could like live, because otherwise you'd have 500 people with unique questions and we wouldn't know what to do
Mm-hmm.
if we did it that way.
Yeah.
But that also, it's not what we want.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the communication. When we started doing this, we tried to do it, we started it, and
Yeah.
then as we were going through, we're like, this is a good idea for some, but this isn't really what we want to do.
Yeah.
So we kind of backed off of that. I think we still have it, or we have it in draft. But we moved on to doing more personal and setting that up and being there,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's just better for us, but also our clients.
Yeah. It's just the way we want to run our business.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference. Okay, getting back onto your topic, it was
Developing lanes.
okay.
Now, this is specifically for people who have partnerships in a business. There's multiple people working it, whether that be like us in a spouse situation, with a kid, actual partnership where you have many people. But I think that's something we heard one time and we started implementing into our businesses, and it's really helped down. We even say it sometimes when we're doing things is, stay in your lane, or I need you to hop in my lane.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like, can you explain to the people what developing lanes are in a business setting?
It's pretty much knowing your SWOT analysis, so your strengths, your weaknesses, opportunities, and threats between two people. And then you come together and then figure out weaknesses and strengths, most importantly, and then you choose each other's lanes for that business.
It's developed into what you're responsible for.
Correct.
So then, and then it also doesn't restrict. If
Mhm.
somebody is not good at marketing, the other person's not, they're better. Well, that person can do marketing, but both of them can come together. But I think one thing we found out is there always needs to be somebody in charge of a specific part of the business
Mm-hmm.
that is responsible for it and can be held accountable.
Yeah.
So then you can report that to each other.
Yeah. Now, there are scenarios, for example, like stuff happens
Mm-hmm.
and where, for example, something happened to me personally, I couldn't focus on business. I needed you to step in and really like take it over. And then something happened to you too, and neither one of us could control the business at that point. It does happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's not ideal, and that's why I think planning ahead is super important. So then you can cover those scenarios where you can't keep up. But that I'm trying to reel my brain back in. This has been a bad episode for me, trying to stay in like thought process.
Having it planned and ready for, worst case scenario. So once shit hits the fan and one person can't do it, the other person can step in and take over.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't want to say minimally do it, but do the best they can in that lane.
Yeah.
And,
and that's something we struggled at.
Mm-hmm.
Because my lane you couldn't fully do because you didn't know how to do it. So it never happened. And that was our weakness, is you never learned what I had to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just did it.
Yeah.
And then I stopped doing it. And then you didn't know how. So then the business went silent.
Yeah. And that rolled into what we talked about is like, we developed those lanes and we communicated,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't stop on like what you do. It was like we had to learn what each other does. So that way, when this does happen, I know what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And so I can step into that lane
Mm-hmm.
and do what I have to do so you can come back.
Yeah.
And that was a lack of communication. I didn't know what you did.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think you knew what I did, or we had to learn,
Mm-hmm.
but we had to, that was kind of the point of this episode. You have to communicate everything about this business.
Yeah.
And make sure both people understand what's going on.
Yeah, because anything can happen at any moment where
One person has to get in the plane and go.
Yeah. Yeah. They know they can't work because they have a bunch of other things going on for the business. So that other person has to step in.
Life happens, and having, like we said, having a partnership allows us to one person take over and move everything at least a couple steps forward or keep it where it's at, rather than if you're by yourself, then it might stagnate back and everything like that. So
Yeah.
it's helpful having you and me together doing everything.
Yes.
And then inside of those things we're doing in each of our businesses, we have like designated things that we're in charge of.
Yeah.
And
There's still weaknesses in our communication for like what the business is, like what's going on and what's happening. And
yeah,
the big thing is also going through emails. I've noticed is we don't communicate like thoroughly with emails, because we rely on that other person to tell us what's going on. And that's not always the most effective because other things happen throughout the day that you don't think about. Oh, what was this email, or what was this email, or what was this email?
yeah, that I think that email gets hard, and you have to learn how to, at that constant learning you have and developing the communication skill, you have to figure out, what do we need to talk about for emails? Who's in charge of the email if you're using one? Do you just send something without talking to the other person? Who is in charge of what email? Because like, recently we had what was it? A credit I was fighting for. So that was something where I had to say like, this was bad. We don't want to pay for this. We would like a credit back. And so I was in charge of that email strain. I'm dealing with everything that came in from I had to look up stuff and do this and report this. And that was something I was in charge of. And I don't know if I think I communicated it better than ever.
Yeah.
So that's just learning and getting in that familiarity with doing that stuff, and kind of getting the habit of telling you what's going on with every email too.
Yeah. Yeah. There's still obviously weaknesses in certain businesses because for our listeners, we don't own just one business. We we like to have ourselves burnt out, essentially.
We like diversity.
That too. But there's like, for example, one business I don't know a lot about because that's not my forte. I still need to know because I'm a big part of it.
Yeah.
And so every now and then I'm like, okay, give me a quick update. What's going on? I kind of heard through the grapevine, this is going on. So like, can you inform me?
Yeah.
And that's something that is a weakness for us, is we don't focus on that one business. We decided to put it on the back burner, but there's still things about it that still need to be communicated because a business never sleeps.
Yeah. Because it's still there. It's still either costing us money or making us money. So it should be something we need to talk about and keep in our minds as well. We can't just forget it.
Yeah.
So we still need to develop that communication skill for that particular business. And then, we want to take that forward. So eventually we're going to have to build up that communication anyways.
Yes.
If we want to actually do anything with it, well, we plan to. So
yeah. Yeah.
I do want to say, like, I think there's like other methods of communication, and you have the Zoom calls. I think talking is in person, or not just in person, but just
on the phone.
Just talking, is great. Because email, I've gotten in trouble for emails being too direct. Like I just asked somebody and they said I was like, hey, can you do this? And they said I would be too demanding in my email. So I had to work on tone of an email, which is very hard to learn unless you talk to that person and on the phone or something. Then it is hard to know somebody's tone of email, especially as an accounting people are very dry. So those emails are even more dry.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I'm guilty of it.
and sending it out. I mean, if you don't use a million exclamation points, you think somebody's mad. And what was it, texting too? If you end with a
Oh,
period,
I'm a super dry texter.
yeah, yes you are. Unless it's those pictures and stuff, then it usually is pretty straight to the point.
Yeah.
But if you're not including like a haha, LOL, or exclamation point in any message, it's like you almost feel like the tone of it is like somebody's pissed. Like, oh damn, they're angry. So it's hard to, grasp the entire conversation of whatever you're talking about, of the subject, when it is nothing that's not just talking. Because even on the cell phone when you're talking, it is easier to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's usually quicker. And
other people might say email is quicker,
mhm.
but it is hard to read emails. Like there's super direct ones, and then there's, floofy stuff.
And some people think like you can have the direct email, but the tone sounds harsh.
Yeah.
Or you can have a floofy email and then you miss the details.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to communicate that you're not mad in an email or a text. And it's usually like, in order to do that, you have to make it sound great. In order to sound great, you have to like become an author.
Yeah.
The lampshade was blue, but well, we needed you to order this, like type of thing. And so nothing makes sense. But again, if you're too direct, then everybody kind of has that perception that you're an asshole. So you have to work with that. And then another form of communication would be, if you're at a place where they make product and you have a board and you just write down what needs to be done, that's a form of communication. Like,
yeah,
we need 15 of these items.
Yeah.
And I think that's a little easier to understand because it's not like an email and text message when it's written somewhere that tells you what needs to be done, or a list, or even like what am I thinking of? When I used to work in the food industry, an order receipt would come in direct, straight to the point. You knew what was going on. So those were never really harsh or they don't need a tone.
Yeah.
Because it's not really a conversation you're having with someone. It's more of like a list of things that you made.
Yeah.
So that one, I think the communication for that one's probably the easiest actually. Just, I need this. Customer 4 needs a burger with cheese. And you're like, I like customer 4. They're simple.
Yeah.
So I think communication is something everyone has to learn and has to work on.
It's part of life.
And we're humans. We're very social beings.
We are.
And I mean, even in social settings, you can tell when there's silence, it's awkward. Or when someone says something weird, it's like, oh.
Like, what do you say after
like you almost have to apologize if you said it because you're like, oh crap, I messed up.
Yeah. I'm that person. I'm the person who says something stupid and then we all sit in awkward silence. And I'm like, now I'm going to think about that later in life.
Like, damn it. All right. That's going to keep me up to today.
Yeah, literally.
So, I think, most of the time people get benefit of the doubt on those things. You just have to move on from it. But business has to be constantly worked on. I think developing the lanes is something very important. And I hope most people kind of take that lesson and work with it too. But also, if they don't have anybody, I think they have to find somebody they communicate with who holds them accountable. Yeah,
that's one way. Like, I know for me, when I started my business, I couldn't afford accountability buddy. And you weren't in the business. You weren't interested in what it had to do or what it was about. You just wanted the money.
Yep.
And so I didn't have a person. What I did is I ended up finding podcasts or finding YouTube channels where in my mind, I'm like, they're holding me accountable to do it.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that's a great point. Like, if we communicated better in the beginning about this stuff and we worked on it and we had that expectation of what our whys were, what our goals were, then maybe you didn't need that. You could have had me as an accountability partner and it could have been easier for you.
Yeah.
And I just think that's something that was our mistake, is we did not communicate properly in the beginning.
Yeah.
And it took longer. So like hindsight, we talked about everything and went through it and worked together,
Mhm.
life would have been better.
Yeah, but it's one of those things you don't know.
You don't know.
You just have to learn from your mistakes. And that's something huge in business.
Yep.
You fail a lot.
More often than you win.
Yes.
Yes.
But you learn from that failure and you attempt not to do it again. Because when you do it again, you're like, why did I just do it again?
Yeah, you feel even more dumb. You're
Yeah.
like, the first time I did it was even worse, was even like not as bad, because then I did it again, knowing full well what happened last time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even we talked about it at one episode where we struggled at communicating. Like, I thought you were doing item A, B, and C. Why you were doing
1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Not even on the same plane.
Yeah. And so it created a rift in the business and our relationship. It was just it was two different C's.
We didn't know what one person was doing, and it kind of got on our skin. Like, why are you doing that? Well, I did this because it's better than what you said. But I don't really know what you said because we didn't talk about what you said. I just thought it was a better thing to do.
Yeah.
And then now we sit and talk every week.
Yeah.
Here's what we need to do. Here's what needs to be done. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
Or what do you think we need to add to this?
Yeah.
And then we put on a list and we get it done. And it's like we said, hindsight, this is what we worked on through failure, but our failure is just kind of what we're trying to tell all of our audience.
Yeah.
Is these are the things that like come up for us, and this is what we're trying to help you with, and that's why we're suggesting to always be communicating.
Yeah, it took us 3 years to figure that out.
Yeah, 3 years. Hopefully it takes you this 40 minutes or whatever this is.
How long this episode is.
It's a much better time frame in 40 minutes than 3 years. It'll be further ahead. So, I mean, do you have any?
No, it's just communication is like your top dog, pretty much. It's before your why, it's before all these episodes we made. Your communication should be your number one. Regardless if you're not in a partnership, if you're just doing business yourself, you still need to communicate and set yourself deadlines and make things happen by holding yourself accountable and communicating that either to another person or to yourself.
Yeah. Either write down a list, talk to them, hieroglyphics, it doesn't matter.
Okay, maybe not that, because then you won't read it later.
I don't know what a fish is for, but okay. So, but you have to get that over to somebody else and have to be, because I think if you think it and you talk about it, write it down, it's another way of you making sure it's going to happen. It's not just one style of it being communicated to yourself. Mm-hmm. So I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think everybody work on the communication. I listened to a podcast that has it's a couple, and they talk about couple things, and every episode the word communication comes up. How could this have been fixed or avoided? Communication. Oh, really? Oh, yeah, that's true. I mean, if you think about it, any argument we might have, if we communicate what we're feeling and everything, and we're truthful about it, it's probably going to go a lot smoother than not.
Yeah.
And what could have helped our businesses 3 years ago? Communicating together.
Imagine that.
What? Like there's a running theme. So where can people find us, get a hold of us? They want an accountability partner. They're like, holy crap, these people sound like they'd be very helpful to me. How do I get a hold of them? Where can I find them?
We're at bennerstride.com. We're also on Instagram, sometimes Facebook.
Every now and then.
We're not big social media people, but we sure darn try.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I feel like I said that wrong, so we're getting to the end of the podcast.
Words are hard.
They are, but we're definitely on bennerstride.com. Find us there. Find us on Instagram. Find us on Facebook.
Mm-hmm. Feel free to message us any questions you might have, and we'll answer them here on the podcast.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that'll do it.
Yeah.
You guys have a good one. Wrap her up.